Hear the wind? Okay. Yeah.
Hi, guys. Welcome to the Upper Hand Fantasy Podcast. This is Faraz Siddiqui. I'm here with Zach Rizzuto. Zach's here. We're getting ready. It's already week 2, dude. It's already week 2.
Yeah.
We're here Thursday night. Should be a good game tonight, dude. Like, I'm happy that, Thursday Night Football kicking off on Amazon Prime. This is not a sponsored segment at all. It's just, I don't know why I said it like that. But Thursday night kicking off. By the way, if you can't find the game tonight, it's because it's on Amazon. It's not going to be on is it going to be on Thursday Night Football too? I mean, I'm sorry, on the NFL Network too? I'm not sure if it
I don't
is or
think it
not.
is. No, I think it's exclusively Prime.
There you go. So exclusively on Prime. So just in case you can't find the game tonight,
find a way to watch. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, Chiefs and Chargers. It's going to be a good one for sure. So in this episode, we're going to go over a few pieces of notes, news and notes around the league. Second of all, we're going to go over our Thursday night preview, and then we are going to go over quarterback rankings and running back rankings. I was like, what rankings are we doing in this episode? So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing. If you want the full set of rankings, we're going to be doing top 20 for quarterbacks, which is probably enough, and we're doing top 30 for running backs in this episode. And if you want the full rankings of quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends, you can check out the Patreon. I forgot to put it in the description down here, but you can just search Patreon Upper Hand Fantasy, or you can go to my Instagram. There's a link there to take a look at that. But let's get right into it, man. We got a couple pieces of news to go over. And the first thing that I wanted to talk about was DeAndre Swift not practicing on Wednesday with an ankle injury. He says that he's fine and he's not worried about missing week 2. He said that he did roll his ankle in the second quarter on Sunday. He didn't practice on Wednesday, so monitor his practice reports today on Thursday, but seems like he's going to be good. Justin Jackson was brought up off of the practice squad, but that might be correlated to something else because one of their players, I forgot who it was, I think it was in the defense. He went, I don't remember, but he went on IR. So they needed to bring somebody up to fill in the 53-man roster, and Justin Jackson was that guy. So I'm not overly concerned right now. I think that DeAndre Swift is going to play. It seemed like he was pretty confident that it's not a big deal. So, just monitor it, but he should be fine.
Yeah, and as of right now, it seems precautionary. And, it's Wednesday. There's still plenty of time before game time. And, if he did roll his ankle in the second quarter, if that's when it happened, and he still played through the rest of the game against the Eagles, there shouldn't be an issue. The other good thing that we have working for us is that he's a 1:00 kickoff. So if he doesn't go, there's plenty of options afterwards to replace him in your lineup. So that's just from a fantasy perspective. But
there you go. And that's because Zach already figured this out because he has DeAndre Swift on like 4 of his teams.
Yeah.
Kenneth Walker practiced in full on Wednesday. Looks like he'll be making his NFL debut this week. I wouldn't start him, but if he's practicing in full all week, I would assume that he would take a little bit of work away from Rashad Penny. And I have Rashad Penny ranked right now as if Kenneth Walker is not playing, so we might have to move him down a little bit, but we'll get there. Yeah. Kyle Shanahan, he mentioned that he's going to go with the hot hand at running back, and that's going to leave room for a guy like Jordan Mason. So if Jordan Mason is available in your league, I'd pick him up right now. I wouldn't start him necessarily, but I would see what happens on Sunday to see what that rotation looked like, see if Jeff Wilson looks like shit. So a lot of people have been asking me about Tyrion Davis-Price, and yes, he was their 3rd-round pick, but he wasn't the one flashing in camp. Okay, it was Mason. So that's why I placed my bet on Mason and not TDP.
Right. That's what I think. Riding the hot hand is nothing new in the 49ers backfield. That's the way it's been for a long time. Exactly. And unfortunately, with Elijah Mitchell out, that's the way it's going to be for the next 2 months, presumably, because I think that was the time frame that they gave Elijah Mitchell before he comes back. Jordan Mason's the way to go. I'm actually more confident in Jeff Wilson, but I'm still not going to be picking up Jeff Wilson. If I had to pick somebody that's going to be the most fantasy productive running back in that backfield, I'm thinking it's going to be Jeff Wilson.
Yeah.
Jordan Mason might come on later, as time goes on. There's plenty of time now.
More of a stash than anything.
There's plenty of time now for Jordan Mason to kind of work his way up and into that second spot because, like we talked about in the last podcast and before, Jeff Wilson, he's good, not great. You call him a Jag. I think that's a fair analysis.
I hate calling people Jags unless they're Jags. Moving on, T. Higgins, he was limited in practice on Wednesday. That indicates that that there's a very possible return from a concussion this week. If he didn't get a practice in on Wednesday at all, then you're like, okay, this could potentially mean a missed game. But it's very positive. That's a good start to the week for someone who is in the concussion protocol, but still monitor his status for Sunday. Alan Lazard, he might be back this week. He returned to a limited practice on Wednesday. So if he ends up getting full practices in, he's going to be on the flex radar for me.
Yeah. I'd look for him to have like a ridiculous target share because Aaron Rodgers, is probably fed up from last week with the drops and stuff. I think I'm anticipating a huge target share for Alan Lazard, like maybe 10, 13 targets.
Oh my God, I could buy into that. I see it. Yeah, it was very frustrating for Aaron Rodgers, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our Thursday night football preview. This one's simple: play everyone.
Yeah.
54 point over under. The Chiefs are favored by 4 points at home. So on the Chiefs side, right, Kelsey's in, Mahomes is in your lineup. I think Juju should be in lineups with a 21% target share last week, given the fact that he ran more routes than Travis Kelce. So
yeah,
Bryce Callahan, he did lock down Hunter Renfrow last week out of the slot, but Juju was actually playing from all over the field. 30% on the left perimeter, 30% on the right perimeter, and 40% from the slot. So that's really good news for him.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to move on to CH. Do you have anything to talk about?
No. I just want to see where you're going to take
it. We spoke about CH yesterday on the pod, and I feel like you can play him as an upside flex. But the floor isn't that high. Jerick McKinnon, is the passing down back. They ended up splitting time on the field down the middle with McKinnon running more routes. And then you have Pacheco to close out the game, right? So like not having garbage time sucks too. Like you want those extra fantasy points. And like I'm thinking like he's relatively touchdown dependent.
Yeah. Well, what's weird is, against the who did the Chiefs play last week?
The Cardinals.
The Cardinals, yeah. All of the running backs looked really good, which is weird. And I don't want to say like really good as in, they're all like starting caliber, go some on another team they're going to be starting, but they looked all competitive with each other and there was no clear number one. So that really just, and even though Clyde Edwards-Helaire, looked really good compared to what I was anticipating, I don't think that's going to continue. I think that we're going to see Jerick McKinnon start to poach those targets from Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And Isaiah Pacheco might get more work on the ground. He was actually pretty efficient when he was running. Clyde Edwards-Helaire might be like, oh, he had a good week 1. He's a screaming start week 2, obviously, because it's just another good matchup and he can carry the momentum. But I don't really see that happening in this game.
I mean, the Chiefs were up all game, right? Like from the beginning of the game, he only racked up 7 carries.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, you're really depending on those touchdowns. It's not a bad offense to depend on for touchdowns. But the underlying usage is not ideal for him.
And it's easy to just dump it off to the running back as many times as they did when they're up that big. You're not worried about throwing downfield too much.
True. And he did get 3 targets in this game. Now, on the Chargers side, Herbert's in. Eckler, I'm expecting a nice bounce back from him. Keenan Allen is out. He is not going to play get a bunch of lineups if he is in there. Mike Williams, I think he should be in lineups as a wide receiver 2, with the wide receiver 1 upside. And Josh Palmer, I think he's a flex play with upside and without a strong floor. But if you need someone this week, I think he's a solid fill-in.
Yeah, I think so. Josh Palmer, we talked about him having, good snaps, what's it called, snap share, and that kind of thing. I think that he's a good play. I'm personally not starting him. I know you are in one league. You're thinking about it. But I don't have a problem starting him at flex. There's no problem with that because, with Keenan Allen out, there are enough targets that he could get enough to be relevant, much more relevant than he was last week.
Yeah, and in that league that I'm starting him, I had Keenan Allen, and unfortunately he's out. And, I wouldn't – I think their next game is on Sunday, so like it'll be 2 weeks out from the injury. No guarantee that he plays in that game either, so just keep that in mind. He could play, that'll be great, but just keep that in mind that he might not. So if Josh Palmer ends up having a good game this week, don't necessarily drop him because you might need him in week 3. Gerald Everett, he's a high upside screamer this week, I think. He ran a route on only 65% of Herbert's dropbacks last week, was not amazing. Only 13% target share, but like, everybody got a 13% target share.
Yeah.
There's like 5 or 6 players who had that type of target share last week. So things can fluctuate, right? The cream can rise to the top, and favorite is the cream. Of course, that's the way I had to use that analogy there. So in a game without Keenan Allen, right, like very high scoring game, I think he's a better stream than normal in normal games, because the underlying usage for him too is not ideal.
Right. No, and we talked about Gerald Everett being a big target for, late rounds in fantasy drafts, and I think he looked really good. Like I said, I keep going back to the athleticism part of his
Yeah,
game. That's kind of going to help him a lot when you have Justin Herbert at quarterback, who's just going to be able to fit the ball in any spot that he can. I actually like I said, I think I said this last episode, that I actually like Gerald Everett more than Josh Palmer in this game. I think Gerald Everett might be in line for more targets. That's my gut feeling. But you can start both of them. I'd start both of them. Josh Palmer as a flex, Gerald Everett, I'm happy starting as my tight end this week and moving forward until things really kind of fall out of favor for him, because week 1 was a really good indicator. I mean, obviously everyone got that same target share that he got, but it's a good offense, and that's what you can expect week in and week out.
yeah, yeah. And if you're desperate, DeAndre Carter, if you're in a deep league, he did score a touchdown last week in relief of Keenan Allen, and he's going to be the guy who's going to be playing over Jalen Guyton, which is a little surprising.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're ready to move on to our quarterback rankings. I'm going to share that on the screen. So if you're on YouTube, you're going to be able to see it. If you're just listening, you won't be able to see it, but I will go through all of them, so you'll be able to hear everything that I'm saying. I have Josh Allen at number 1. Any other quarterback you have at number 1? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts at number 2 behind Josh Allen, 90 yards rushing in week 1. He finished as the QB4. In a high scoring, week 1 was a pretty high scoring quarterback week. And he didn't even throw a touchdown, and he still finished as a QB4. So, he accounted for 28% of the Eagles' designed rushing attempts, and that's not including his scrambles. He ended up with 17 rushing attempts in this past game.
Right.
They were up most of the game, right? And they decided to let Hurts drop back 42 times in a game they had a positive and neutral game script for. So, I think a lot of people might have Justin Herbert or Patrick Mahomes ahead of Herbert here, who, by the way, I have at number 3, number 4. But if the dude has this type of rushing day and throws a touchdown pass or 2, like, this would be quite the fantasy performance.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes, I feel like, the fact that they're playing each other really kind of moves them up for me. I think having them at 3 and 4, though, under Jalen Hurts, which the Eagles are playing the Vikings, is going to be a shootout. Jalen Hurts, like you said, with the rushing upside, makes him number 2 for me. Josh Allen, I don't think anybody's going to be ranked over Josh Allen unless Josh Allen is injured. So having him at 1, you pretty much pencil him in every week as QB1. But Herbert and Mahomes, I think this is the way the top 4 is going to go. It's going to be Josh Allen 1, Hurts 2, and Herbert, Mahomes. They could challenge Hurts anyway, depending on how the game goes tonight. But I think this top 4 is how it's going to play out this week.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the next 2 guys will challenge, this top 4, right? And Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray. I have Lamar at 5. I have Kyler at 6 against Vegas. Kyler had a rough day last week, against the Chiefs without a lot of his weapons. But he still ended up with more than 20 fantasy points in, regular 4-point passing touchdown scoring. So, Zach Ertz is expected to practice in full on Thursday. Monitor that. So that, should be a familiar target for him to rely on. He didn't play a ton of snaps last week. So this week he should hopefully see a full complement of routes. And then he's going to have Hollywood. And Vegas has this game at a 51.5 over under. So the hope is that Kyler can kind of bounce back and show what his ceiling is. It is encouraging, though, that he was able to get it done, even in a bad overall showing for his offense.
Yeah, and it was more of a salvage of the day type of performance for Kyler Murray, but that's all right when it comes to fantasy. Obviously, for the team, it was a bad day, but when you can score 20 points coming back, from just a blowout, that's fine for a quarterback. 20 points in a losing effort, I was all right with it. I was hoping that would be more of a shootout than a blowout, but that's just not the way it worked out. I wasn't surprised because Kyler Murray was missing a lot of his weapons, but we're going to see his weapons slowly come back get more healthy, that kind of thing. And that's going to, I think, make it so Kyler Murray is going to progressively get better and better, closer to his ceiling. I think this is an appropriate ranking right here. I like Lamar Jackson a little bit more. But against the Raiders, this also has a chance to kind of go nuclear in terms of offense, like you said, with the over-under being so high. Devontae Adams on the other side. I like Kyler Murray for this week. I think his upside, like you said, could challenge, 3-4 instead of where he's ranked at 6. But I think 6 is a solid spot for where we have him.
Yeah. I have Russell Wilson at 7 against Houston. I think it was a weird-ass game on Monday night. Russ still ended up with 18 fantasy points with only 1 touchdown thrown, and that's because he ended up throwing for 340 yards.
Yeah.
I have Tom Brady at number 8. Would you have him at 7 ahead of Russ? Like, all of his receivers are banged up right now besides Mike Evans. I'm just slightly nervous with him going into New Orleans this week. After he only threw for, about 200 yards on Sunday night.
Yeah.
And I'm even looking at Burrow at 9 against Dallas. I was thinking about moving him up as well. So maybe ahead of Russ, even at 7. Like the dude, he threw 4 picks, right? But somehow ended up as the QB6.
That's not happening again. That's not happening.
Yeah, but he still ended up as the QB6 on the week.
Yeah, that's true.
But at the same time, I do like Wilson's matchup against Houston.
Yeah.
So I think maybe if T. Higgins is back, I could move up Burrow a little bit, maybe above Brady at least, and then maybe above Wilson too. Where would you have those 3 guys?
I actually like the way that it's showing up here. I would move Joe Burrow from 9 to 8 and Tom Brady down to 9, but leave Russell Wilson at 7 because Russell Wilson is now pissed off because he just lost. He just lost to his former team.
Is that possible?
He's going to take he's going to take that anger out on Houston. I'm calling it this week. He's going to have a big game.
Okay.
Tom Brady, I'm moving him down below Joe Burrow because the Saints have been his kryptonite since he joined the Buccaneers. Also, the Saints have a good defense. And when Tom Brady played Dallas, whose defense is close when it comes to, talent across the board with the Saints, it was a rough showing. Like you said, Chris Godwin's going to be out too. Leonard Fournette might be doing most of the work for the Buccaneers this week because it might be a grittier game than you might think. And Joe Burrow against Dallas, Dallas has a talented defense, but Dallas tends to play uninspired when they don't have their starting quarterback. So I'm putting Joe Burrow there. He's also going to have a get-right game. Jamar Chase shouldn't have any trouble cooking Trayvon Diggs.
I hear that. Now, I have Trey Lance at 10, okay? And, I think he'll be fine, right? Like, I will continue to start him as a low-end QB1. The design rushing attempts, the highest in the league among quarterbacks. He won't have a monsoon to play in, but there actually might be rain in this game, but it won't be a monsoon at least. And he is going up against Seattle at home. It's a good matchup. I think this is a get-right spot for Trey Lance.
Yeah, I think so too. I think we might see something along the lines of, a solid 60 yards, not 60 carries, a solid 60 yards on the ground, and a pass touchdown too. And if we're lucky, a rushing touchdown. I don't think it's going to be a humongous offensive game, but I think it's going to be enough that fantasy managers are going to be able to settle down and be like, okay, let's just stick it out for the long run. We'll be fine. Trey Lance is going to be fine. If it does rain, that's going to be really disappointing because then we're going to have to wait another week to see how he plays in just decent conditions at this point, because it's been suboptimal so far in week 1. Week 2, if it's more of the same, it could be rough, tough sledding for Trey Lance. But
yeah. I think a little rain is going to be fine,
Yeah.
as long as it's not the monsoon that it was. And, he played perfectly fine in the first 3 quarters, right?
Yeah.
Like, but when the monsoon hit in the 4th quarter, that's when, he kind of fell apart. And like, I'm not going to judge him on that, man. I'm not,
You can't judge any of the players in that game.
Yeah. Joe Burrow threw 4 interceptions. Like, okay.
Yeah. And that was in good weather.
So now I have Stafford here at 11. I think he does bounce back against Atlanta at home. Didn't look good at all last week, but it was against the Buffalo defense. 2 safeties high. Those 2 safeties are really good. Just gave him trouble, man. They basically took away Allen Robinson as well. So, in Atlanta, the cornerbacks in Atlanta are good too. However, they did get cooked last week. So I'm cool playing Stafford as a quarterback 1. I think he bounces back.
Yeah, I think that's fair. If you're gonna get right, it's gonna be against Atlanta. I think Atlanta, I kind of crap on them a little bit more than I should, but they're a decent team. I think that The fact that they're at home, though, again, the Rams, they'll be fine. If they can just incorporate Allen Robinson a little bit, I think that's going to open up a whole new world for the Rams
A
offense.
whole new world.
And I know that's exactly what you're looking for, too. You want Allen Robinson more involved.
Did you see how people are so upset with the new Little Mermaid? There's a new Little Mermaid movie coming out on Disney.
I didn't even see that.
And like the trailer came out, and people were like upset that there's a new Little Mermaid out. And it's like, guys, like, I have kids, and when any new Disney movie comes out, like we are ecstatic. And
yeah,
and yes, I was a little kid when Little Mermaid came out. It was probably the first movie I've ever seen. I think I watched it in kindergarten. And it's like,
that was the first movie you picked. The Little Mermaid as your first.
No, I didn't pick it. I watched it in kindergarten class.
Yeah.
In kindergarten, they played the movie for us. For some reason, my parents didn't like show me movies at home. Like it was like that type of thing. I was just like, they're like, no, you're gonna do math and you're gonna learn how to read. Like you were not like, I was a typical brown boy, like as a little kid. And it's just like, no, you're not watching movies. No. And then in school, I'm like, wow, like what is this? This is super cool. Anyway,
a whole new world.
A whole new world. Let me get back on track here.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at Carson Wentz here at number 12. That might surprise some people, but I was very surprised by how this offense was looking and how Carson Wentz was looking. And listen, like this can change back to normal in an instant, but for now I have him at number 12. They seem to have turned into a very pass-heavy offense, and we know that because they were leading the entire time and they still pass the ball. And the other thing is that they use play action at a ridiculous rate, and that's going to be amazing overall for the pass game, for the quarterback, and especially for the receivers. So it's literally ideal for what you want to see in terms of a passing offense and for a fantasy friendly passing offense. So low-key exciting, this offense, which was, I was not going to say that. Like, this is not what I was expecting at all coming into the season. But we'll see if this can continue. It's only 1 week. We've seen teams, kind of change things up from week to week. But if this is their true philosophy, and if they continue with this type of game planning and execution, and especially like the close to 50% play action rate, like I'm in on this offense.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised, with the Commanders' performance and Carson Wentz especially. And that was kind of my big takeaway, was that I saw shades of former MVP candidate Carson Wentz coming out. And he still has, the inconsistencies. He did throw 2 picks, and they kept it relatively close with the Jaguars. But, it was awesome to see him throw 4 touchdowns. He didn't look anything close to what he was last season with the Colts. I think he looked really just like boring and bland last season on the Colts compared to just his first game with the Commanders. I think that he has much better weapons around him. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor wasn't like anything to sneeze at. Michael Pittman was good, but I think that it's a more complete offense for Carson Wentz to operate out of. And it seems to me that, it actually looked like he was having more fun playing in Washington too. And that doesn't count for anything for fantasy, but he just looked more dynamic and more involved. I was very happy to see that. I'm not surprised to see him up here. I would put him there because he draws another good matchup against Detroit, who just came from a shootout with another NFC East team.
Yeah, no, for sure. Now, I do want to take I'll take a little bit of a break after the quarterback ranking. I was going to take one now, just because we're going to kind of get into like outside the top 12, but we'll wait a little bit on that. Jameis, I have him at 13. Solid weapons. He should be fine. Kirk Cousins at number 14, Rodgers at 15. I have Carr at 16. This is like that streamer group right here. I would have Carr ahead of Rodgers in what should be a high-scoring game between the Cardinals and the Raiders. But he sucks. I got Justin Fields at 17. I got Marcus Mariota at 18. Both of these guys, top 5 in design rushing attempts is what you want to see to keep these guys relevant in fantasy moving forward.
Yeah.
Mariota finished as a QB 10 in week 1.
I think Marcus Mariota is going to open a lot of eyes because he's actually not bad.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. Anything that you is standing out between 13 and 18 here that you would kind of flip around? Jameis, Kirk, Rodgers, Carr, Fields, Mariota.
No, I think that's about right. Just Derek Carr's sole purpose is now his new fantasy function is just to be the sidecar, get it, for Devontae Adams. So that's what he's going to do. He's just going to fuel Devontae Adams. That's his only purpose now in fantasy.
Nailed it.
Sidecar. I'm going to call him that from now on. Sidecar.
I love it. Rounding out this list for the top 20 is Matt Ryan and Tua Tagovailoa. I think Tua didn't have an amazing fantasy day last week, but I think there are better days ahead for him to at least finish in like the top 15, top 16. He has Tyreek there, he has Jalen Waddle there. We should see some better days.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, let's take a little bit of a break now. I just want to quickly talk to you guys about Underdog Fantasy. And you guys have seen that I've been putting these picks out. So they have these things called uppers and lowers. They're basically underdog pick'ems. Like, so for tonight, in tonight's game, they have a whole bunch of lines that you can choose from. They have all these players. You can choose higher or lower on fantasy points, on passing yards, on rushing attempts, on scrimmage yards for all these different players. And then you can kind of combine them, right? And you can combine these picks together, and you can multiply your money based on how many you get right. So you have a maximum of 5 that you can kind of, put together. So for example, Justin Herbert over 300 passing yards, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, over 30 rushing yards or whatever it is. You pick 5 of those type of players, put them together, and you could potentially 20x the money that you put in. Okay. You don't have to pick 5, you can pick 3. But if you pick 3, you only 6x your money, which is pretty legit. But you have a better chance of winning because of the fact that you're only choosing 3, right? So you can choose anywhere between 2 and 5. You have a multiplier if you get these right. They also came out with this new feature called Pick Insurance, where you end up winning less money if you get all your picks right. However, you get the leeway of potentially, if you miss one of your picks, you still win money, which is not like what they had before, where you have to get all of your picks right. Okay. So you got to check out Underdog Fantasy. It makes the games a lot more interesting. Obviously, you have your fantasy teams to root for. But if you're already playing fantasy, you kind of have an idea of what the matchups look like. You kind of have an idea of what these players are going to do in these games. So why not check out these lines and put some money down and try to multiply your money. Now, if you go to Underdog, you download their app. I have the link here in the description on YouTube. I'll have the link in the podcast description as well. But if you just download the app, or you go to underdogfantasy.com, if you put in the code upper hand, if you use the code upper hand, you will double your first deposit up to $100. Okay, so use the code upper hand and start playing Underdog. It's fun, dude. I love it. And you recently started getting into it too.
Yeah.
And you've been kind of messing around with that as well. So like, I feel like it's just a fun addition to Thursday nights, to Sundays, especially because you got a bunch of players to choose from, and
Definitely.
Monday nights too. So,
Yeah,
so definitely take a look.
If your fantasy team isn't playing tonight, if you don't have any players tonight in a Thursday night game, or you don't have players in a Monday night game, just make it a fantasy game. go and pick a couple higher lowers. Do whatever you want to do. It makes it a lot more interesting to watch, especially once we get, this is already a marquee matchup between Chiefs and Chargers. But when you get games where it's not the good teams, where it's like the Jaguars versus somebody, still it can make it fun. So much fun to play and bet, especially when your team is off at least that night. So go for it. Do it. I just started. It's a great time.
100%, man. 100%. All right, let's get into these running back rankings. We got Christian McCaffrey at number 1. Despite a bad day in the box score, obviously I could put JT first because Christian McCaffrey didn't have a great week 1, but his underlying, usage is great. Like 79% of dropbacks, 83% of snaps. Like, that's ridiculous. He's going to be fine. First game this year. This is one of the lowest uses he's had in like a couple of years. But the underlying stuff is exactly what you want to see, and it just means that he's going to bounce back. JT's usage improved. Okay, it actually improved from last year.
Yeah.
And if week 1 is any indication, he might be more involved in the pass game. And it's not just because of the targets that he got. The Colts were down in this game, and he ran a route on 62% of Matt Ryan's dropbacks. Nyheim Hines was only at 38%. So you combine that with Taylor getting pretty much all the rushing attempts, right? 76% of the snaps in a negative game script, right? That's amazing. So that's what we want to see, and we hope that continues.
Yeah, no, it should. Jonathan Taylor, I think he's a very, very sure bet every week. Like you said, he doesn't have the upside of Christian McCaffrey, but that usage that we saw is like completely contrary to what we heard. Because, people were up in arms that Frank Reich was saying that he was going to lower the workload. He might have weeks where he doesn't get the workload that we saw last season. And that very well may be, but this kind of workload, he got work that he didn't even have last season, which is like, it unlocks a whole new, and not to say a whole new world again, but
Do it.
it's a whole other side of his game, and especially for his fantasy value that goes up because it's the receiving work that he was missing last season, and we saw him on the field for more receiving work. Not that it necessarily um, he didn't really cash in on that this week, but if it continues, he will eventually cash in on that, and it'll just be ridiculous. You'll have a cheat code.
I hear that, man. Now I have Cook at number 3. He didn't score, but the usage is legit. He's a bell
Yeah,
cow right now. The Eagles gave up 172 rushing yards on the ground last week to the Lions, so it's looking nice for Dalvin Cook this week.
right.
Leonard Fournette at number 4. This might seem high, but his usage was that of a bell cow and a lot higher than what we thought. He ran a route on 76% of Brady's dropbacks, and we got to remember with all these numbers, he came out early in this game. And 76% of Brady's dropbacks, that's so legit. Like when you consider the rushing attempts he had too,
Yeah,
he would have had more if he didn't. I think what happened was he tweaked his hamstring because he didn't practice. No, I'm sorry, he was limited in practice on Wednesday with a hamstring. I think, and he did kind of like hobble off the field, like not in a terrible way, but like he did hobble off the field a little bit, and that's why Rashad White came into the game. And also the game was out of hand, so I think he should be fine. But just monitor that. I don't think it doesn't seem like a big injury. If it was, he wouldn't even have practiced at all on Wednesday.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And, just kind of talk about the two guys that you just mentioned, Dalvin Cook. I only chalk up his low fantasy output and last week to Justin Jefferson just running the whole show, in Minnesota. So
Yeah.
I'm not worried about it. We talked about the usage, definitely, easy. Don't panic on him at all. Don't even think about, thinking, oh, he might not be who we think he is. No, it's Dalvin Cook still. And then Leonard Fournette, I kind of predicted that it's going to be more of a ground and pound, a little bit grittier game, and Leonard Fournette's going to be the head of the Buccaneers running attack against the Saints. Brady historically, like I said, against the Saints in the division, since he's joined the Bucs, has been pretty rough against the Saints. So they might try to take some of the responsibility off his shoulder this time and kind of hand that to Leonard Fournette. I think 4 is a good rank.
I have Saquon at 5. This might be kind of high for a lot of people too. The dude was awesome. He played a ridiculous role, bell cow, every down workload. He led the team in routes. When a running back leads the team in routes, you got something special there. And he looked like his old self. So I'm happy with him at number 5. Is he too high for you?
I don't think so. I mean, the matchup is it's all right. It's pretty good. I think these are two very similar teams as far as talent wise goes. It's going to be a close game. It's as long as it's close game, they're going to be getting the ball with Saquon early and often. So
yeah, and the Browns they ran all over, and the running backs and Kareem Hunt also received a bunch of stuff too.
Yeah,
in the pass game, and they killed it against Carolina. I got Austin Eckler at number 6. For tonight, we talked about him already, but we're hoping his usage pops back to normal this week. DeAndre Swift at 7, Derrick Henry at 8, James Conner at 9. I got Mixon at 10. Henry didn't look amazing in week 1. The fact that he got like destroyed on that play and like he got knocked down, like that's not something we see happen to Henry. We see Henry do that to other players, to defenders, right? And now he's going up against Buffalo, right? I wonder, first of all, it's a tough defense. Second of all, what if Buffalo goes up in this game? Can Henry get it done this week, right? And like I'm thinking, look, I have him at number 8. I have him above James Conner. I have him above Joe Mixon. Two guys who, you're not as concerned about. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like I have Derrick Henry there because he's Derrick Henry.
Yeah, definitely. You talk about Derrick Henry. Maybe we saw him get punished. He was on the punishing end of a hit. Which isn't something that we usually see last week. But I'm not too worried about Derrick Henry. I think that if he gets a little bit of work in the receiving game compared to, obviously last week, Dontrell Hilliard was just vulturing the touchdowns. But Derrick Henry, it's going to be okay. If the Titans are going to keep it close, it's going to be because of Derrick Henry, I think. Last week was an outlier. He did run for 90 yards. It just didn't really, come out. It didn't pop on the stat sheet because there weren't any touchdowns. It wasn't a bad week. It's not really like, oh man, Derrick Henry, he just does not look the same. He had a couple breakaway runs. They weren't the 90-yard, 80-yard breakaway touchdown runs that we see, that we've become accustomed to seeing. But I think he looked fine. it is a tough defense. It's a tough matchup. I think there's a better chance of him underperforming than overperforming, but I think that he's still going to be fine. I wouldn't be surprised if he rushed for a solid 70 yards and a touchdown, and that's plenty enough, I think, for the matchup that he's going into.
Do you think he's too low?
No,
at number 8?
I don't think he's too low. I think that the guys ahead of him have the upside. They're much more dynamic backs.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry's really just a ground and pound guy. If you could get a couple catches, that's just going to make him a little bit more useful.
Okay, good. Now, Joe Mixon, what's interesting about Mixon is that he did get more 2-minute snaps than we're used to, which is good. So if that sticks, he'll be closer to like the mid RB1 in ranks rather than the low end RB1 in ranks. The Cowboys didn't look great trying to stop the run against Fournette last week.
No.
So that's something to watch. Hopefully, P. Ryan isn't the third down back, or that 2-minute back anymore. I think that would make a pretty significant difference, to Mixon and his value.
Yeah, definitely. And that was the big problem with Mixon last year, is that he would get they would put him in, they'd walk him down the field, and then P. Ryan would be catching passes, and not necessarily scoring touchdowns, but the money situations where you get those quick hitting points, like at the end of the half, or like we said with the 2 minutes, where the Bengals are in offense, and you just chuck the ball to the running back multiple times over, like 3 or 4 points add up at the end of the quarter and at the end of the half, and that makes a big difference in a player's fantasy output. That was the problem with Joe Mixon. He wouldn't have the receiving upside, but he was actually hyper targeted. I don't want to say he was hyper targeted, but he was targeted a lot more than we usually see Joe Mixon targeted, and that had a lot to do with the game script. But if we see anything close to that, which we could against Dallas, I like Joe Mixon outperform where he's actually at right now at 10.
Yeah, it seems low, right? It does. Yeah. Alvin Kamara, I have him at 11. He was battling a rib injury. They think he's going to be fine, so I'm hoping his usage does go back up. Week 1, his usage wasn't great. It wasn't what we're used to. Didn't run a route more than 50% of dropbacks, which is low for him. But we know where his, that's where his skill set lies. But I do think it's because of the rib injury, and hopefully he'll be okay. Let's see how he practices this week.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not worried about Kamara just yet. Obviously week 1 wasn't encouraging, but I'm not worried about him just yet.
Exactly. Javonte Williams, I have him at 12. Despite him being on an almost even timeshare in terms of snaps, we're hoping those targets keep on coming, man. And it's possible that it does. If he is getting another 10 plus targets, like, he will be an RB1. He would have been the RB2 or RB3 if he scored a touchdown last week. So he still has RB1 upside even with Melvin Gordon there. And it's possible as the season goes on, maybe Javonte gets more looks, because he did look a lot more explosive than Melvin Gordon in this game.
Right. I think so. And as long as the fumbling issues stay away, obviously both of them fumbled, but
Yeah, for sure. I have Aaron Jones at 13. I think he bounces back this week in the pass game. Given we talked about it yesterday, him being a buy low, but he ran 65% of routes on dropbacks. Given that, I think Aaron Jones will be fine. We talked about him at length yesterday, but his usage is encouraging, even though he only had about 10 opportunities.
Right.
So I got Nick Chubb at 14. I got AJ Dillon at 15. So he moved way up into my RB2 rank. Seems like he's going to be very involved. What do you think of AJ Dillon this high at 15?
I think it's fair. Especially we talked about the usage, like you said, a lot yesterday, but the usage is enough that AJ Dillon's going to be relevant, because the touches that he's getting are much higher quality than Aaron Jones. I do think Aaron Jones is going to out-touch him, get more opportunity this week, especially compared to last week, than AJ Dillon. But Dillon, as long as he's the goal line guy and, he's catching a couple passes, he has the upside to be an RB2 for you. And there's no reason I think that you shouldn't start AJ Dillon if you have him, especially if there's an open flex spot. He's locked in for at least a few good touches, especially with the Packers wide receivers as thin as they are.
Definitely. Darrell Henderson, I have him at 16. A little bit of a risky play, but I'm assuming that he gets at least 70% of the snaps that he got last week. He got all the work. He got all the snaps.
Yeah.
He ran all the routes. He got all the carries. It was all him. And I don't see a very drastic change coming into week 2. Like, we could see a little bit of a change, kind of introduce Cam Akers a little bit more into this backfield. But who knows with Sean McVay? Like, he leaves zero clues. Right. Yeah. He could put Cam Akers in for 100% of snaps. Like, it's like, all right, well, we have to do our best to try to figure this out. And for now, with Dale Henderson healthy and him getting all the work last week, I'm going to play him as a solid RB2.
Yeah, that's the only thing that scares me is that, there's nothing keeping Cam Akers off the field besides Sean McVay. So I just kind of have that cloud looming over my head thinking that,
For
Darrell
sure.
Henderson looks like a really good play right now, but it could easily be flip-flopped on a dime, no warning, and now Cam Akers is getting a majority of the snaps. So I feel like that's the way that Rams backfield is going to be, all season. But right now, Darrell Henderson looks like the much safer play because of the work that he had, and he didn't look bad with the work that he got last week. So
I have Antonio Gibson at 17 without Brian Robinson there in a game where they can be in it against the Lions all game long. I think he's a solid RB2 this week. And the Lions is a good matchup. So I think Antonio Gibson should continue to be in lineups, and he got a bunch of targets last week. Let's see if that continues. As long as they are up, if they're going to be passing a ton on early downs, Gibson will be running a lot of routes, and maybe he'll get another. I think what did he get last week? 7 targets, 8 targets, something
I think
like
it was
that.
8 targets.
Yeah, like that's legit. I don't know if that's going to continue, but
yeah,
it's something to keep him in your lineup. Cordell Patterson at 18 after his monster opportunity game last week. Damian Williams still not practicing because of that rib injury. Chase Edmonds, I have him at 19. He gets an upgrade in full PPR, and I have Kareem Hunt to round up the top 20.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts from 11 through 20?
I like Chase Edmonds, in this matchup because, if Baltimore would happen to go up, they're going to be passing it a lot and they'll be dumping it off. I think Chase Edmonds might perform a little bit better than we have him ranked right here. I think this is kind of his floor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does make sense. My only concern with him is that, he has to be kind of, relatively efficient on his touches, and I'm hoping that he can get the same type of target share that he's going to continue to get, or that he got last week. And let's see, maybe he'll get some goal line carries. That'll be
if that goal line carry comes, we'll be talking about it on next episode of the pod.
That would be awesome. All right, so the elephant in the room here.
Yeah, I saw a couple comments about it.
Yeah. Let's. I'm gonna pin Zach's comment here. There's another Zach here. It's not just you.
Yeah, if this
I'm trying to. If the graphic would load right now, it's a little slow. But yeah, I don't have Najee in the top 20. I have Najee here at number 21, and you'll see it in a second. I swear. As soon as this graphic loads, let's see if it ever loads. It's coming. Oh, there it is. Najee, I don't have him as a top 20 play, and this might be a little crazy. And you might be wondering, like, where the hell, like, over the first 2 slides, like, where the hell is Najee Harris? And he's here at 21. And this might be way too low. It's possible that it's very low.
Yeah.
But the combination of the foot injury, a bad offense, right? Possibly not having him play on every down role because of the injury, that scares me. Okay. And I want to see how he looks in this game before I trust him. New England didn't allow Chase Edmonds or Raheem Mostert to get anything going in the run game last week. They had 17 carries, for a combined 41 yards. Okay. So this isn't looking like an efficient day for Najee Harris unless he gets peppered in the receiving game, which he was not peppered in week 1. So
not like Ben Roethlisberger was doing it. No.
So am I crazy, dude? Like I'm looking at the top 20 guys, and I just feel more confident with them right now.
I think that's fair. I mean, it's a little low. It's just the pedigree of his name. We know what he was last season, and it's really hard to be like, well, he's put up 10 points in week 1. Let's just throw him down here. People might be upset about that, but I agree. The injury, that kind of coupled with the inefficiency, coupled with New England being a good defense, it just doesn't scream huge fantasy performance. And because we're saying this now, he's going to score like 30 points. But
I'm scared of that. Sure.
If all signs, are kind of come to fruition, all the signs that we're seeing now come to fruition on Sunday, I don't think, we're going to be too surprised when he doesn't perform as well as other people might be thinking. It's easy to say that Najee Harris is going to finish higher than a guy like Chase Edmonds, because like Chase Edmonds he was a sleeper, but no one really projected him to be outscoring Najee Harris at any point. but I think it's at this point it's very possible because Najee Harris he could be on a snap count. His usage was like ridiculous last season, and if they want Najee Harris for long term, they might be buckling up and thinking, okay, let's take it easy here. It is a Liz Frank that they think that he might have tweaked, but not to the point where it's season ending. It's a touchy injury, and I know you talked about that before, so
it is.
They might take it easy this week, maybe even next week until he gets back 100%.
So, so for those who are listening on the podcast and not watching, it's kind of funny because I just pinned Zach's comment up here on the screen, and like he's like Najee isn't a top 20 play ? Question mark, question mark, question mark, and his avatar is Russell Westbrook. You know that GIF when Russell Westbrook is just like, huh, like what?
Yeah,
like that's what. And so it's like it's really funny. What?
it works.
Najee's in top 20 play. It works really well. So I appreciate you, Zach.
You think he changed that especially for that comment?
For that question, yeah, exactly. Yes. All right, so I have Zeke right after Najee at 22. It tells you what the confidence I have in Zeke. I have Najee above him, but I have Zeke at 22. I have ETN at 23. I'm fine playing ETN as a low end RB2 this week. I think he has upside. Like I watched this game and I watched his touches, and when you watch this dude play, on the touches that he did have, he looked explosive. So I do think they want the ball in his hands. I don't see them, trying to limit him by any means. He looked good, man, and he had a couple of plays where he could have had touchdowns. So I think he has some upside. I think this is a conservative ranking for ETN, but I think that he does have some upside this week.
Yeah, definitely. I might even venture to go and say that Travis Etienne should be above Zeke. I'm surprised.
Yeah, the reason why I had him there is because like I'm curious to see if the role increases, right? That's my only concern with ETN. It's like, all right, and if there is a goal line carry, like, is it going to go to James Robinson and not ETN? With Zeke, it's like, all right, if there are some goal line opportunities there, he should be able to cash in.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I look at it. But yeah, no, I can see that in a full PPR league, especially. Maybe I'll go ETN.
Yeah, with Zeke, goal line carries are great and all, but you have to get to the goal line first before you have goal line.
I see that you have zero confidence.
They're the only I'm just saying because the Cowboys are the only team that didn't score a touchdown in week 1. If you watched the game, Zeke didn't look bad running, which then you laugh because when Zeke was doing terrible, they just kept feeding him the ball, and now that he was actually running decently and decently hard, they went completely to the air and completely ignored Zeke. So there's a lot going on in Dallas. I get Zeke being that low.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So maybe we should move ETN up to 22. I have David Montgomery at 24. I have Jacobs at 25. Should we put ETN over Najee?
He just jumped right back to ETN being over Najee. I wouldn't at this point. I think Najee has, even though it might be a mitigated workload, it's still a surefire workload. He's clearly the RB1 on the Steelers, and if they cut down, if they trim his snaps a little bit, it's not going to be to the point where he's splitting like ETN might be with James Robinson.
Okay.
Good try though. Good try.
Good. So we got David Montgomery at 24, Josh Jacobs at 25, followed by Michael Carter, Rashad Penny, and I might have to move Rashad Penny a little bit down. If Kenneth Walker plays, maybe this is still appropriate. But I have Sanders at 28, CEH at 29, and Jeff Wilson at 30. David Montgomery at 24, I think this is kind of where he was ranked preseason too, kind of like a low end RB2. Khalil Herbert kind of making his way into the rotation, and then him getting some goal line looks like not great, but David Montgomery still got his touches. So I think he'll be fine. I think his floor is there, but I'm not sure if he has that ceiling.
Yeah. Let the record show. I'm just looking at this graphic now. And not Elijah Mitchell at the bottom. It's supposed to say Jeff Wilson, and that one's on me. And
did I put Elijah Mitchell there? That's so funny.
I think Michael Carter at the top. No, that's me. I'm the graphic guy. That's my problem. But
that's so funny.
So yeah, we're not ranking Elijah Mitchell.
Okay, so hold up. Where was Michael? Where did I have Michael Carter?
Yeah, Michael Carter. It's supposed to say Michael Carter. It's just I got the wrong Jets back that I put in there. So that's my bad. But we are not ranked.
Breece Hall then?
No, he wasn't on the list.
Dude, you're confusing the shit out of me right now, my guy.
Okay, so you read your rankings.
I'm just kidding.
You read your rankings.
I'm just kidding. So here's rankings. Ready? Yes, you're right. So I have Michael Carter at 26. So I had David Montgomery at 24, Josh Jacobs at 25, Michael Carter at number 26, followed by Rashad Penny, followed by Miles Sanders, followed by Clyde Edwards-Helaire, followed by Jeff Wilson. There you go.
Yes.
That's what it's supposed to be. So Breece Hall, I think I have him at. Let me see where I have Breece Hall. I have Breece Hall at 31. So he's right after Jeff Wilson. And I don't have Elijah Mitchell ranked because he is on IR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, that's basically what that looks like. So yeah, did you have any issues with these? Like just looking at it, like Miles Sanders at 28, I think that's solid. We talked about CEH already. Do you think Rashad Penny, if let's say Kenneth Walker does end up playing, like what are you seeing out of Rashad Penny this week?
I don't see his workload changing too much. I could see Kenneth Walker kind of sliding in, taking the Travis Homer snaps. Travis Homer was a little bit active in the passing game on what was it, Monday night? Yeah. So I think even coming, if Kenneth Walker starts, I think they might take it a little slow with him, work him in because he's coming off that injury. Penny, they've been handing the ball to him, and Penny didn't look bad. The thing is, both of these guys, they're not like awesome running backs right now, so they might both be limited in their own way.
Yeah.
I don't think Rashad Penny has too much to worry about this week if Kenneth Walker would come back. But as he gets healthier, as Kenneth Walker gets healthier, it's going to kind of shift, I think, more to a 50-50.
Right. I can see that. Maybe not right away, right? Maybe not in week 2, but I think as the season moves forward. See, my issue here is that the Seahawks, like, they looked fine last week, but like I don't really project them to be a great offense, right?
Yeah.
Moving forward. So if you're looking at 2 early down backs, we're splitting the early down role, right, between Rashad Penny and Kenneth Walker on a bad offense, like how much opportunity are they going to get? And you still have Travis Homer there. I do project Travis Homer as continuing to be the passing down back, even with Kenneth Walker, because Kenneth Walker doesn't profile as a pass catching running back. Excuse me. So that's my only issue with that situation. Maybe this week it's fine to throw out Rashad Penny in your flex because we know he has that big playability. He almost, like, there were a couple plays in that game where he almost broke one.
Yeah.
Right. There's some good tackling in that game on Denver's side that prevented him from breaking one. So, for a touchdown. So I can see that happening this week. So that's why he's a flex play, because he has that upside to do that.
Definitely. The other name that kind of stands out for me, I think Josh Jacobs is a little high. I'm not a big Josh Jacobs fan at all. The Raiders offense we've seen is now going to flow solely through Devontae Adams. So, I'm not sure how much work Josh Jacobs, what his upside is going to be in the receiving game. His rushing game is all right. I don't think it's going to be anything great, though. They didn't pick up his 5th-year option. I don't think they're too excited about involving him heavily in the offense. So I think Jacobs is a little bit high. I might put Rashad Penny over
Michael. Okay, what about Michael Carter? Because I have Michael Carter at 26. So would you put? I have Jacobs at 25, Carter at 26, Penny at 27. So would you put both those guys over Jacobs?
I think so.
Or just Penny?
I think so, just because of the situation in New York, as Mr. Joe Flacco dump it off to the running back, all day. I think that's what's going to kind of push me with Michael Carter, because he has that receiving upside, and I don't expect that receiving upside to continue. It's not Michael Carter isn't demanding the targets; he's just going to get them because Joe Flacco is the quarterback.
Now, the reason why I had Jacobs there, and I think I still am going to stick with that, is because Arizona looked really bad against these running backs. Like, as we mentioned, against Kansas City last week, all these running backs basically looked really good in the run game. So I think Josh Jacobs could potentially do some things there. And then number 2, like, there's going to be a lot of scoring in this game. 51 point, 52 point over under. So there's going to be scoring, and Josh Jacobs could potentially take one in. Now, the good thing about Jacobs is that Zamir White wasn't really involved, right? So it's like it's an early down back with Jacobs and a passing down back, which last week was Brandon Bolden, right? Not who was their passing down guy again? I forgot. I keep forgetting what his name is. There's another passing down back in Abdullah. Now, this week, Brandon Bolden didn't practice yesterday. So just keep that in mind if you're in a deep-ass league and you're thinking about starting Brandon Bolden for whatever reason. And by the way, Brandon Bolden's role is startable in a 14-team PPR league, by the way. That role is startable. Okay, I'm just saying. Because remember, this is the Patriots offense, what we're used to going to Las Vegas, and that pass-catching running back has always been fantasy relevant. Okay, not must start, but fantasy
Right.
relevant in deeper leagues. So if Brandon Bolden's out, Amir Abdullah is on the PPR flex radar in 14 team leagues. But yeah, it's those two guys. Zamir White wasn't really involved. So Jacobs, has that kind of early down role locked in right now. So we'll see. I'm not a fan of Jacobs either like that, but I think he'll be okay as a low end RB2, like high end flex option, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Do you have any other concerns about these other guys that I had ranked? Jeff Wilson at 30, is that too low, or is that kind of taking into account the risk that he presents?
I think that's fair. I mean, I think that the majority of the game, this might be a lower scoring game. It's two semi decent offenses. Two all right offenses and good defenses. So I'm not expecting too many fireworks in this one. If it came down to it, no, I think that's fair. I was going to say,
there is a chance that Jeff Wilson does his thing because like Seahawks defense, rush defense last year wasn't great. They looked bad against Javonte last week too. I mean, on Monday night. So, you could throw him out there and be relatively like okay with doing that. It's just that he's a little risky. That's all. He doesn't have a high floor.
Yeah.
But that'll do it. I think that's going to be our top 30. You can visit our Patreon. The link is not here in the description. I'll put that in later. But you can hit the Instagram, go to Patreon, or just Google Patreon Upper Hand Fantasy, or go to patreon.com, search Upper Hand Fantasy. You'll find it. Full rankings will be there later today. And you can check that out over there. So also, a quick shout out to Underdog Fantasy. Use code Upper Hand to double your deposit, your first deposit up to $100, and play on Underdog tonight. It's going to be fun, and I'll be putting out some picks as well on my Instagram. So definitely. For me, for Zach, take it easy, guys. We'll be back tomorrow at noon Eastern time to go over wide receiver rankings and tight end rankings. So we appreciate you guys. Take it easy. Have a good one. See ya.